Hello, friends. Uncle Marv here with another episode of the IT Business Podcast, the show for IT professionals, where we try to help you run your business better, smarter, and faster. Although, I should probably warn you that tonight is not one of those nights. We will not be talking about tech, and we'll be not talking about some of the normal stuff that we talk about. And I'll explain why. Originally, I had a guest, and we were going to talk about a specific vendor topic in the channel. The guest had to reschedule, and then I started reaching out to people that would come on and chat with me about either some of the ubiquity stuff that I have been doing or some of the Synology news that is out there, some of the other news. There's a lot of stories that are happening out in our channel, but before I could get confirmation on whether a guest would join me tonight, I got caught up this morning watching a YouTube video that I didn't plan on watching, but it struck me and it kind of hit a nerve. And I thought, I have been wanting to talk about this type of thing for quite a while, and I've kind of been putting it off and not dealing with it. I have talked about such topics in the past. I've had several shows where I talked about some of the topics and just kind of stopped doing them for whatever reason. Some of it is because a lot of you probably don't really care about these topics, but there's a lot of people in our channel that do. And a lot of discussion has always had back doors, conferences, after hours, people have been drinking. All of a sudden, people have stuff to say, but when it comes time to saying stuff on record, in public, a lot of people are hush-hush. So that's never really been me, except I have kind of suppressed myself from time to time. I try to make sure that we're on topic. I want to bring up things that you guys and gals really have an interest in, something that helps us move forward with our businesses, helps the industry move forward. But every now and then, we have these things that we just have to bring up, and they need to be talked about. So let me give you a little bit of background, and I'm going to actually bring up a video here, because as you saw, the way that the title read, it's basically all about Jimmy Kimmel. And to be honest, I knew that he had been taken off the air. I did not really know much about why. I have no idea what he said. And even after I watched this video today of his return, I did not go back and listen to what got him either kicked off the air or censored or whatever it was. I'll be honest, it doesn't really matter. What matters is what happened as a result, and the fact that his free speech basically got censored, and all because somebody or somebodies were butthurt over what he said. That's just my guess. That's my opinion. That's not a fact. And like I said, I did not go do a lot of research here, but what did happen is he came back and opened up his show with a lot of gratitude for his supporters and even for those who disagreed with him, but yet defended his right to speak. He discussed being temporarily pulled from the air, the political pressure exerted by the current administration, and recent threats to media freedom. Kimmel emphasized the value of living in a country where he can host a show like this, and paid tribute to colleagues and critics alike, and warned against government control of speech. Some of the talking points, basically, he acknowledged, the support, even those who disagree with him, and he brought up some stuff later. I'm not going to get into all of that. He clarified that his intent was never to mock tragically or blame groups, and express empathy for his critics' concerns. He described threats to media freedom, including FCC Chairman Brendan Carr's comments and political pressure from President Trump to have late-night hosts removed. He warned about the dangers of government regulating what can be said on TV, posing questions about the future of podcast freedom and public disclosure. And that's kind of where I stepped in, because I'm like, you know what? This could happen to me. This could happen to other podcasters. This could happen to, anybody that is out in the media, on the internet, in public. And not that I'm comparing what I do with what Jimmy does, because listen, Jimmy talked about himself being a small fraction of ABC. I am yet a small fraction of our channel. So it's not necessarily, a correlation to some degree. Basically, it ended up with him calling for unity on core issues most Americans agree on, and for public pressure in defense of press and speech freedoms. He closed with a message about grace, forgiveness, and the shared values that unite Americans. And that's pretty much it. That's what he did. Now, from my perspective, I watched because, one, my wife was kind of interested in it. It was on my TV in my office, and she heard him come on. So I listened to a local radio show on YouTube in the mornings. And when that show ends, then it just goes to YouTube, and whatever comes up, comes up. I don't really change the channel that much unless I'm looking for a particular type of video to watch, whether it relates to podcasts, whether it relates to products. There are some other topics, non-tech related, that I follow on YouTube. So I may poke around for those. I may go to some comedy shows just to kind of, lighten the mood, if I'm having a day or something like that. But in this case, none of that. It just came up, and I was like, oh, what's this? She came in, and we watched, and I listened, and I saw him get choked up partway through, and that caught my attention. And it caught my attention because here he was talking about, free speech. He did apologize for what he said. Again, I don't know exactly what he said, but I do know that the political climate in our country, it's a difficult place to be. And I usually will avoid religion and politics. You rarely hear me talk about them. However, we have to from time to time. And I actually have to do it sometimes just to remind you guys. Sometimes I think you forget that I'm black. And the things that I have to deal with on a regular basis, many of you don't know about, and you don't think that they exist anymore. You think that we live in a world where everything is perfect, and all of the troubles of the past, because it's 2025, yeah, we don't have those things to worry about anymore. We don't have racism to worry about anymore. You know what? We do. I still have them all the time. Now, it's not every day. I'm not going to try to, make it seem like I walk out my door and it's a black versus white world. It is not. But there are times where things happen where I know and I can tell that there is a disdain for me simply because of the color of my skin. And I usually don't worry about it. I'm not out to try to tell the world everybody has to be colorblind. But I do think that it is one of my responsibilities to make sure that we keep things like diversity and DEI in the sphere of conversation. And I'll be the first to admit I've not always been that person. If you want to go back and look at how I acted when I first started my business and when I was doing stuff in high school and college, I was the type of person where I never wanted to gain an advantage because I was black. It was never about getting a handout. I specifically did not take any minority business loans. Even SBA loans, I'm like, you know what? I need to run my business without that. And that's the way I thought it should be. I never wanted to get ahead because of what was a perceived imbalance or perceived slight or anything like that. So I worked really hard to succeed in spite of those things. So I think what happened is a lot of times people thought, oh, well, Marvin doesn't believe in equality. Yeah, I do. You don't believe in racial equality? Yeah, I do. You don't believe in diversity? Yes, I do. Because here's the bottom line. It's still a problem in this country, in the world, that people are simply dismissed for the color of their skin. They're dismissed because of their gender. They're dismissed because, they're female and they're this and that. And we can go round and round and round about, what is ethically right in all of these situations. But the bottom line is, if you call yourself an American and you call yourself a Christian and you say that all beings are created equal, well, then equal means equal. And a lot of the things that were done with civil rights and diversity and stuff, they weren't meant to give us an advantage. They were meant to give us an equal playing field. And so that's kind of where sometimes I have to remind myself that while I may try to play by rules where I don't utilize those things to my advantage, there are a lot of people that I need to help because they may not have the same situation as I do. Diversity and DI were meant to create environments, and those environments, whether they were work or school or society, where people of all backgrounds were valued equally, and that still doesn't happen. So we are in a world now where people are thinking that, okay, we can do away with those programs and stuff. But here's what it has done, in my opinion. It has emboldened certain groups to use that as a license to put their foot down or put their thumb down on those people that they think are less than equal. And that's not what that was intended to do. If you want to do away with those programs, then you've got to figure out a way to keep the playing field equal, which means you can't allow one person, one race, one gender to devalue another. That's all it is. That's equality. And yet, you're right. There should not have to be a program to tell us how to do that. But because people are people and people are sometimes stupid, we have to put those guardrails in place. We have guardrails in place for a lot of things, for driving, for, the way you buy a house, for, going through education. We have a lot of guardrails in a lot of areas in society that we just allow to be there because we understand. And this is one of those areas that for some reason, people don't seem to understand. Equal means equal. We're all born on this one earth. We're here. Why should one be any less than the other? I didn't really want to get onto a race topic, but I just felt I needed to remind people about me and my situation. I sound white on this podcast. I sound white when I talk to prospects. But when I show up and you see me in person and you realize I'm black, oh, wow, didn't realize that. You listen to country music? Yeah, I do. But I listen to all types of music. I listen to Tupac. I listen to rap. I listen to Celtic Woman. I listen to a cappella. I listen to jazz because I'm well-rounded. Because I figure I am not going to pigeonhole myself into one genre just because of a stereotype. I find music that I like, and if the song is good, I'll listen to it. And maybe I've gone a little too far with the country thing and need to pull back because it's given a lot of people a false sense of who I am. So I need to correct that. Now, some of you may go, well, Marvin, what have you really experienced in your life? You seem to have things pretty well. So let me tell you a few things. I can't tell you everything. One, because they're deeply personal. And you don't need to know details. I'll give you some stuff where, yes, I still get pulled over by police because I fit a description. A few years ago, well, it's more than a few years ago now, it was when we were still at the townhouse. My wife was out of town. I had the police knocking on my door at about 2 a.m. I came downstairs, And the cop, shined the light in my eye, and I could see another light behind me. And because from the front door, you could see out the back patio door, which was, screen patios. There was a fence back there, and there was another cop with a flashlight shining it over the fence into the backyard. And they were looking for a particular individual, thought that they had run into our area. And I don't know why they came just to my door, but obviously they were looking for a black man, and they asked me, what am I doing? And obviously I was sleeping. I'm in gym shorts, and they're like, well, you look dressed. I'm like, come on, really? And then they look to the left, and in our townhouse, right next to the door is the stairwell to go upstairs. And on there is a shelf of pictures, and I don't know, 4 or 5 shelves. And if you don't know by now, my wife is white. So a lot of those pictures were of her family, which are white people. And the cop looked at me and was like, well, what are you doing in this house? And I'm like, I'm married. And I had to find the picture of me and my wife on the shelf because I thought he literally was going to yank me out of the house. That's enough I'm going to say on that story. But I will say that another thing that some of you need to know, and I've let this slip over the years, and some people think that it's funny, but my graduate degree is from a seminary. So when I graduated college, and I graduated with business administration and a minor in math, I went to Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in Wake Forest, North Carolina. I'm not going to tell you what I thought I was going to do, but it wasn't to be a preacher. It wasn't to be a minister, but there were some things in that area that I thought I would do. I had been a youth pastor. I had done a bunch of parachurch things, and let's just say I needed to figure some things out. So I went. In the first year, fantastic, great. I attended church on campus, and everything seemed fine. Yeah, there were a few black people on campus, no worries. Wake Forest, North Carolina is kind of outside of Raleigh, kind of secluded. We would go into Raleigh at times. I was a member of Junior Achievement, and Junior Achievement had an office down in Raleigh, so I would go down there, do stuff with them. Didn't seem to be an issue. Came home for the summer, worked at my church, leading that youth group, went back to the seminary the second year. The church that we were attending on campus had moved back to their building, which is a couple of miles away from the school. And I went to the church Sunday morning, had service, everything seemed fine. Me and probably 10 or 12 of the students were there. Went back, had a great day that afternoon, went back for Sunday night service, and was met at the front door by a couple of elders who said, "You're not welcome here." And I would tell you folks that of all the times in my life that I have had an opportunity to be scared or nervous, that was probably the only time where I really thought that when somebody said to me, if you don't leave, I'm going to get my shotgun, that was it. So those are the types of things that I have dealt with in my life that I think you need to know my perspective. That yes, while I may not preach from the high heavens about race and equality, they do not leave my thoughts at any given time. So I was going to say some more on that, but I'm going to go ahead and move on. So what does that mean for the podcast? What does that mean for our tech sector? Well, we in this industry seem to have a propensity for keeping silent about all things. We talked about race. We talked about equality. Anytime that somebody wants to stand up for, race, gender, LGBTQ issues, it seems as though people will be like, don't talk about that. That's not, we only want to talk about stacks. We only want to talk about vendors. We only want to talk about the nice things. But here's the problem. Some of you, when you're out at night at those conferences and you're drinking, you say some shit that you don't need to be saying. And I've said some things to a couple of people because I I think that one of the biggest problems in the world, that the reason evil can continue is because good people say nothing. And so there have been times where I've felt it my obligation to say stuff because, first of all, I'm right there. So it needs to be said. And whether it's, about a sexual misconduct with a woman, or whether it's a minority joke, whether it's something that is just inappropriate, period, it needs to be addressed. And our industry, for some reason, thinks that it's okay to be hush hush, sweep it under the rug, and let's deal with something another day. I read a term the other day that kind of helped me understand that it's called shadow ban, where it's a decision of an individual or group, whether they feel like they're under pressure or not, to just simply remove the situation from themselves. Or, let's not deal with that. We don't want to bring that, whether it happens in the social media groups. I know that there are some of the social media groups that anytime something creeps its head up about these things, the moderators will be like, no, we can't talk about that here. And so what happens is all these discussions are hushed, and you got to go somewhere else to deal with them. Meanwhile, this is somebody in the tech space, just like the rest of us, who's trying to run a business, trying to make a living, and trying to do what's right. And hushing these people, in my opinion, is the wrong thing to do. And then when you do stand up, like I'm doing now, and I know that some of this is going to be an issue because there will be backlash. It's the word I'm looking for. Where, the target will become me and not the issue. The target will be the person that is trying to stand up for right, as opposed to dealing with the people who are doing wrong. That will quench the spirit of people. It's one of the fastest ways to just, break somebody's soul is to just never allow that to come out and to squash it and sweep it under the rug. So I can't do that. So Jimmy's suspension, it just simply brought up all that stuff to me, that it's a cautionary tale for all of us, that speaking up for honesty, speaking up for equity, sticking up for marginalized colleagues is risky. And it's something that I hope we can figure out a way to handle better. Another area, so there's one topic that I really want to get to, but let me explain something before I get to that. Trunk slammer is a term in our industry. And when you hear that term, it conjures up, operations of, a tech that basically is doing job to job work. They have no concern for the quality or accountability of their work. They are literally operating out of the trunks of their cars. They cut corners wherever possible, and they leave a trail of poor workmanship. And they're basically damaging our industry. Here's the problem with that. I have heard many people immediately make the assumption that if you are a solo tech, you are a trunk slammer. That's not true. And that's one of the things we have got to fix in this industry. That was something where a conference in 2015, I was sitting in the audience listening to a panel of MSPs on stage talk about why they were struggling in their business. And I heard a gentleman at the end of the panel complain that he had 8 techs making $600,000 a year, and it was the trunk slammer's fault. And the first thing that caught my attention wasn't the fact that he said trunk slammer, it was the fact that 8 techs and $600,000 was absolutely ridiculous, because at that time I was a solo tech making $300. And I thought, money's not the issue. But I wanted to just reiterate that fact. Being a solo tech or even a small shop doesn't make one a trunk slammer. There are plenty of large MSPs that are doing the same type of crappy work, the same type of corner cutting, doing the race to the bottom worse than a lot of solo techs I know. And to some degree, the techs are showing up sloppily dressed, not caring, and literally pissing off customers because they're not doing a good job and they don't care that they're doing a bad job. So it's not about headcount. It's not about the size of your office. It's about how freaking professional you are. It's about commitment. It's about integrity. It's about all those things. So this idea of labeling everyone that's a solo tech as a truck slammer has also got to stop. Now, at the same time, for those that are out there doing a bad job, we do need to call that out. Whether they're a solo tech or whether they're a large MSP, if you're hurting our industry, you're hurting our industry, and people need to stand up to that. That's where I would like us all to be. So, use Trunk Slammer as the transition to this last example that I'm going to be honest, this was probably, you thought the black stuff was hard. This was probably harder. Because in 2019, I thought I would stop podcasting. I thought that there was going to be an issue that was just going to be enough to take me over the edge. And part of it started when a gal by the name of Elizabeth Lamb, also known as Elizabeth Vanover, basically claimed that she was being cyberbullied by a bunch of truck slammers. And that lit a fuse under me. And I probably need to do a little bit of history to explain why. So at the beginning of 2019, I was introduced to Elizabeth Vanover at the time, who had been making her rounds in our space since about 2016 or so. And she was portraying herself as an MSP marketing guru. And I had her on the podcast a couple of times. And through the podcast, she actually got some people to sign up with her. And it was a monthly deal where she would take care of their marketing, their social media, help them with lead generation and things of that nature. Well, in just a few short months, we found out that she was taking money and not doing any services. And in my opinion, and if you watch American Greed or any crime show, that would be considered a fraud or a scam. And I started calling her out as that. Now, there are a lot of people in our space that was like, well, maybe she just tried and was on bad times and blah, blah, blah. But let me tell you where it took a turn. It took a turn because when she started getting called out for not doing her work, she didn't apologize. She didn't say, oh, I'm going through some stuff. She literally turned it around and attacked people. Well, actually, she did pretend to be sick a lot. She did pretend to have people in her family die. She did have some other things that she pretended to do. But when those things didn't work, she literally started attacking people and calling out men specifically when it came to sexual misconduct and blaming them for, sexual harassment on her. She started attacking people with, I'll just say, issues within their family. People were dealing with personal tragedies and personal issues, and she would expose that and hammer that and attack it. Then she would try to discredit people, and she would gather her friends from other spaces to gang up and attack. And what happened is that people kind of didn't really care that we were saying she was defrauding people. It was all about, well, you can't attack our poor Elizabeth. And that turned out to be a pretty big deal because Elizabeth, of course, tried to attack me and the podcast. At the time, I was part of a podcast network group, and she tried to get the network group shut down. She tried to claim that she would sue the podcast, and then she even tried to say that she would bring the FBI in for false comments. And I'll be honest with you folks, at that point I was like, bring it on, because I had the evidence. I had the group of people with proof showing that Elizabeth had taken at least 200 grand or more over the years and done nothing with them. We had employees that had worked with her in the past that could prove it. Yeah, I took a little bit of offense because she came on my show and she signed up my friends, and then she attacked my friends. And I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to protect my friends. I'm going to protect our space. And I said it then, and I will continue to say it. I will never back up. I will not back down that situation. Well, this is a situation, as I said, that happened in 2019. And in 2020, after some changes, some lateral moves and all blah, 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 she went out of the space in 2020. And so there really has not been a reason to bring it up again. I get asked about it a lot. I don't update people a lot. Do I know where she is now? Yes. Did she do what she said she was going to do in terms of becoming a nurse? Yes. And I know that she's done some stuff. I don't know what she's doing right this minute. But I do have people that from time to time reach out to me saying, is this the person that you talked about on those shows way back then? And stuff will happen where she is still lying to people about situations. And I don't necessarily want to keep track of her, but if she shows back up into this space and starts to do the same thing, I'm going to bring it up. Now, why is that such a big deal, you asked? Well, some of this same situation where Jimmy, got censored and pulled off the air because somebody got butt hurt. Well, that's kind of what was being done to us back then. She literally was trying to come after us. And many, I'm going to say many of you, there were several people in this space that took her side and literally thought that, something should happen to me and the show should be gone. And we were cyberbullies and all of that stuff. So the misplaced blame was a problem. Other people in the industry to just simply come after me because we were reporting what she was doing was the wrong thing to do. And that there. I'll say this. That was probably the first time that I had received pressure from people not to discuss difficult topics, not to bring up things that are uncomfortable. Just let it blow over. But here's the problem. Bringing that up would have meant that she would have kept doing what she was doing. She would have kept on taking money from people. And I was much happier hearing people say, man, thank you. I almost signed up with her. Or hearing people that had been taken advantage of finally come up and say, thank God somebody did something I was afraid to. Somebody had to do something. So not bowing to the pressure to shut up is basically what was happening in our industry. Persistence leads to impact. We have to raise awareness within our space when things are wrong, whether that's inequality in race, gender, whether it's somebody doing bad in our industry, whether it's a sloppy MSP that is literally, helping the race to the bottom. If it's a trunk slammer, it's a trunk slammer. But if it's a large MSP doing worse than trunk slammer, call them out too. Why does all of this matter? The instinct to silence whistleblowers or silence people that speak up is basically a systemic flaw, whether it's in the public or whether it's in the channel. Easy as that to say. We have it here. We have We have women that have tried to speak up about sexual misconduct at conferences, and everybody will give a brief little pat on the shoulder, or sorry that happened to you, but in the end, we'll do nothing to see that it doesn't happen again. That up because that was a situation that I was part of, where somebody came to me for help, and I did what I could to help. But in the end, I don't think anything was done. It's a shame. And women still continue to have these issues at conferences. That's got to stop. So none of these situations justify rushing uncomfortable truth. Honest, that I don't know what Jimmy said. At some point, I'll go back and watch. But I will defend anybody else's right to free speech just as much as I will defend my own. It's a country where freedom is something that we have to cherish, and we simply cannot miss people. We can't react with violence. We can't censor people just because we don't agree with what they believe. We are all different. We're different colors. We're different races. We come from different parts of the world. We have different lifestyles. We have different upbringings. We're bound to be different. But denying somebody else the ability to live freely, talk freely, make a living freely is wrong. Or white, red or brown, blah, blah. That's pretty much it. This is not an easy topic, and it's not one that I obviously rehearsed. It was something I thought about during the day. I spent the day at a client's place, so I kind of had to throw my thoughts together. So they may sound a little discombobulated. Apologize. Say this, I have thought about what I do with this platform many a times. I know that while I am a small person in this space, I do have a digital footprint, and things that I say can and will be used against me. And I try to be respectful of that. And always do it the right way. And I may have said some things that upset some people, offended some people. I apologize. I know it's a problem if I know I'm wrong. I will continue to speak my mind. I will continue to risk sharing my thoughts and commenting on what's happening in our space. I will take ownership of my digital footprint, which is why tonight you did not see a sponsor logo on this show. You did not see me thanking anybody. There were no advertisements. There were no nothing. This is me, my thoughts, my words. And I don't want you to think that I'm speaking on behalf of any sponsor. I don't want you to think that a sponsor is putting words in my mouth or telling me what I can and cannot say. In 2019, I lost listeners. I don't lose listeners today or lose sponsors, but I imagine that is a possibility. But the bottom line is that I will be here to support free but respectful speech. Now, advocate for the open exchange of ideas in our space, mindful of the fact that freedom of speech does not protect one from consequences, and will always try to balance authenticity with responsibility, especially on the sensitive topics that are in our space. That is going to do it for tonight. I thank you for watching and or listening. We'll see you soon.